Wow. So for more on this story, let's bring in legal expert Michael Zeldin. He's a former federal prosecutor. Thank you very much for joining us this early morning, Michael. I appreciate your time.
My pleasure.
So the San Francisco DA says this was politically motivated. What, if anything, can be learned about the motive from these charges that he's facing specifically?
Well, what we can learn is from the words out of his own mouth. He said he was there to kidnap Nancy Pelosi, to get her to, quote unquote, tell the truth or get her kneecaps broken. He said that he was there in effort to start a second American Civil War. And we've seen that sort of language previously. We saw that in the murder of Clem Pickney, the Reverend in Charleston, South Carolina, and state rep from South Carolina. The assailant there was going to start a second race war. The Governor Whitmer were part of the Wolverine militia to start a second civil war. This is all part of a right-wing attack on politicians, but more importantly, a right-wing attack on the fundamentals of our democracy.
Well, let me ask you about Whitmer there, because she has some folks that were convicted. Is her case instructive at all in this, or is it just a similarity that there was a Democratic politician who was attacked by folks that are espousing some right-wing beliefs?
Well, there are similarities and dissimilarities. In the Pelosi case, it's an individual. In the Whitmer case, it was a conspiracy, and those people were convicted of conspiracy and others supporting the conspiracy. But what they have in common, Mitch, is that they are both political crimes. If there was a political hate crime statute, like there is for race and sex and elder, this fellow would be charged with that.
Well, now, I understand from his affidavit, from the unsealed affidavit that was used to charge him with those federal charges, that he did say that he believed Nancy Pelosi was the leader of a pack of lies of the Democrats. But is there anything else to say that he specifically was from one party or the other, that this was politically motivated, or did he not just not like Nancy Pelosi specifically?
I don't think you can take his comments in any context other than it was a broadly anti-democratic and therefore anti-democracy statement. He was not there to target her individually, but to target her individually as a representative of the party that she is the leader of and the issues that she holds dear to her.
So what we mentioned Governor Whitmer previously. Now, that is a state official, the governor of Michigan. Are there going to be tougher punishments here, potentially, if he is convicted because of the federal role of Speaker Pelosi? She is third in line to be the president.
Right. In the state charges, if he were convicted of everything that he's going to be charged with, he could face up to life imprisonment. In the federal charges, he could face two different charges, kidnapping and assault on a government wife, the husband of a government official, and those carry 30 and 20 years respectively. So he could face the rest of his life in jail for this crime.
My goodness. One more question to you. There was something mentioned in the affidavit and the charges, attempted kidnapping on account of official duties. So there is some sort of statute in there that if you're targeting a politician because of their position and what they do politically, that there could be an additional charge. At least that's how I read it. You are the former prosecutor. Please clarify that for me.
Well, it's the attempted kidnap of a government official. Remember, what he said was that he was going to wait for Nancy to get back, even if it took several days, because he needed to talk to her. And if she didn't tell the truth, he was going to break her kneecaps so that she could be wheeled into Congress in a wheelchair to say that there are consequences for her belief system. So it is that is at issue in this second charge in the federal criminal case.
Now, again, in that affidavit, that's where we're getting all this source material. It is directly from the federal government and the case that they are making against Mr. DePappy, who is the accused here. It says he was Mirandized, and so that would seem to make his confession here valid when it's going to be used in a court of law. Is there any way he gets out of what he said and what is written down in that affidavit? Is it just an insanity plea at this point?
Yeah, I would think that's right. Some sort of mental insanity or diminished capacity or whatever California has at the state level that would be his, if you will, ticket from non-liability criminally. But unless he can establish that he was severely disabled mentally, he's going to go to jail.
Thanks for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation in your cable lineup. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-based, unbiased coverage.